Good evening and welcome to the first of today's two Science Week's lectures. My name is Nick Keep. I'm the Executive Dean of the School of Science. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Birkbeck College. So we have two lectures this evening. At 7 o'clock, Dr. Iwaz Duintai will be giving a lecture on can mindfulness meditation training improve self-regulation in adolescence. Even if you haven't signed up, you're welcome to come to that session. Between the two lectures, there will be drinks in BO2, which is just out in the corridor, left, right, and left. There'll be people to point you in the right direction. Science Week continues through the rest of the week. On Wednesday, we have lab tours of our X-ray crystallography facilities and two talks by biological sciences, redesigning biology, engineering safer genetically modified organisms, and crystallography, the past and the future, always in fashion. And on Thursday we have a talk from the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences, what can asteroids tell us about the Earth? And another psychological sciences talk, the hidden complexities of routine behaviour. And on Friday there are careers presentations, opportunities for careers in science. But of course what you're here for is the first of this evening's talks, which is why is the development of face-to-face communication so important for babies? This evening's talk is given by Dr. Atsushi Senju, who comes from our Centre for Brain and Cognitive Development just over the other side of the square in the beautiful welcome building we have over there. Atsushi came to Birkbeck in 2006 and has held a number of independent research appointments as his research has gone from strength to strength. He's won prizes from the British Psychological Society and the American Psychological Association. He's one of our rising stars of research, and as I said, his talk this evening is why is the development of face-to-face communication so important for babies? Atsushi.
Cool. Thank you, Nick, for introducing me. So thank you very much for all for coming in for this evening's talk. I'm Atsushi Senju. I'm going to give a first talk of today. And as Nick introduced me, I'm from the Center of Brain and Cognitive Development, which is also known as a baby lab. What we do in baby lab is we study what baby thinks, what baby know, how baby see the world. But because the biggest question we can have to ask is how to study baby's mind, because in children or in adults it's much easier. You can think about it. You can ask questions to the child, or you can ask questions to the adult, and then ask them how they see particular image, or like how they think about particular problem in the world, like how particular persons, or you can also think about like doing some kind of exam-like test and cognitive test to the children or to the adult and ask them to actually solve the problem, like solve the puzzle as quickly as possible, and then we can measure how good they are good at solving the question. But all of these things you cannot do with the babies, because you cannot instruct the baby to what they want to do, because they only do what they want to do. So how to study such baby's mind in a scientific way, that is one of the biggest questions. Then one of the major behavioral way we are studying the baby's mind is the eye gaze. How long they look at something and where they look at something. Because one of the reasons is because the oculomotor mechanism is one of the fastest developing motor system in the baby's system. Because they start, because in the first few months, like first 9 months of age, they cannot move by their own. Probably from 6 months old, they could be slightly better at like moving their hands. Or like even from 9 months, they started to crawl and they can move around. But well before doing this, like right after they are born, their eye movements are very efficient. So the best way to get into baby's mind is through baby's eyes. So for example, you can present two images on the screen, like one image of the cat and one image of the dog. Then let the baby watch the movie, these images, and where cat and dog is not probably the best option. Like one of the picture of the man and one of the picture of their house, for example. Then what you tend to observe is that the babies start to look longer to the picture of their mom than the picture of their house. Then what it can tell you, the bottom line, the least you can say from this image is because they can discriminate between two images. So they understand one image is different from the others, or they are clearly discriminating one image from the others. Which one they prefer, and this is another question. I can come back to this question later. But by doing this, and you can see that the baby can discriminate. Like, for example, you can present like a baby's image of like a different cat and a different image of a dog. Then you can start to see like whether they start to look differently from cats to from the dogs. Then you can see that whether baby have a like a cognitive image of the category of the cat instead of the individual cats, or a category of the dogs. So you can start on looking at see what they do. And actually, slightly older age of the babies, like from 9 months, 12 months old, baby can start to anticipate. So for example, when you show the movie of someone reaching for a toy, then the way baby's eye moves is that the baby starts to anticipate the action and start to look at the toy before the hand reaches the toy, which means that the baby start to have an understanding of the action, that action have a goal. Then by doing moving the eyes ahead of a hand action, the baby starts to anticipate that probably this person's goal is to grab the toy. So by recording eye movement in a very timely, precise way, you can see that the real-time online cognitive processing of the world in the baby's brains. So eyes can tell you many things. On top of that, you can also directly measure how the baby's brains are moving, how babies are acting using a number of different techniques. To begin with, I can show you some of the video clips created by our CBCD, the Baby Lab, which shows, in which we explain the three of the major methodology we are using in the lab. One of them is like eye tracking method, where we record baby's eye movement, and the two other measurements are called EEG and NIRS, which is both the way you can actually directly measure baby's brain activity. One is using the electrical recording, other is using the light. And I can show you some of the videos in which our colleagues are explaining some of the methodologies. First one is for the EEG, and the second one is for the eye tracking, and the third one is for the NIRS. And
so one of the trickiest things about studying babies and their development is that babies at a very young age, they can't yet speak, they can't move much, so there's very limited things that we can test by just looking at their behavior. Whereas by using methods like this, we can look at their brain activation directly and study abilities before they can actually express them. So the way it works is we know that our brain cells talk to each other by very faint electrical signals, and the sensors that we place on the baby's head pick up this activation. So the nets that we use are specially designed for babies, so we have different sizes for every baby head size. This is what it looks like. It's basically an elastic hat that we just stretch out and put on the baby's head. Each sensor has got a sponge inside, which we soak in warm water with a bit of baby shampoo and salt beforehand, so they're nice and soft and warm against the baby's head. And we entertain the babies with some bubbles and things like that. So while these nets might look like something from a science fiction movie, they're perfectly safe, so there's no risk associated with using these nets. All the sensors do is record the activity that comes out of the brain, but they can't change it at all. So it's like a thermometer that measures the temperature but doesn't affect it at all.
So this is the first technology called EEG. So it can catch a faint like a neural activity, which is like electrical signal from the surface of the baby's head, and then just amplified by our amplifier to measure when this electrical activity is happening from the surface. So the two further image I can show you is about eye tracking. Eye tracking is the way you can measure the actual movement of the eyes on the real time. It's a kind of special camera which uses infrared light to identify the shape of the eyes, and from the shape of the eyes, the system calculates the exact point of the gaze. The second one, which follows this video, is a near-infrared spectroscopy, which is which probably Sarah, our colleague, can explain in more detail. But in roughly, it's the way you can measure the change in the way your brain uses oxygen by recording the color of the blood.
One of the techniques that
This is about eye
the
tracking.
Center for Brain and Cognitive Development is eye tracking, which allows us to see exactly what the baby is looking at, either on a screen or in a live scene. Tracking babies' eye movements can tell us a huge amount about cognitive processing and is a fast and detailed tool for assessing the early abilities of babies. Eye tracking uses non-visible infrared light to create reflections on the cornea and pupil of the baby's eyes. And a camera in the eye tracker detects these reflections, and the computer can calculate the exact position of the eyes on the display that the baby is watching.
And this is about the news.
So this is the near-infrared spectroscopy headgear that we use with the infants here, and it's been specially designed so that we can fit it on very fast and very quickly, and it's comfortable as well, so the babies don't really notice it when it's on their head. So if you have a look at the array here, we have lots of optos, one after the other, and if you look on the back, what happens is these optos are either source lights or detectors, and these work in pairs together. So the light will go a little way into the head, and when it reflects back out again, they're able to read this, and it will change colour according to the colour of the blood. So if the blood is more red, it means there's more oxygen in there, and that means that that part of the brain is more active. So if you look at the whole hat, we're able to get an array of different colours according to which part of the brain is active. And this is ever so easy to put on. You just place it on the baby with the Velcro at the back and a little ribbon that goes under their chin, and then they're just free to watch the stimuli, whichever thing that we present.
So these are the three major technologies we are using to actually measure babies' brains or babies' mind. And if you want to see, like, there are a couple of more things on the web page, cbcd.bbk.ac.uk/babylab. So if you want to see the full length of picture, this video, which also have a more like other behavioral measurement of testing, as well as another technology called EMG, please visit our webpage. So using these technologies, also the scientists in the CBCD, the Baby Lab, are studying many different things. My particular specialty, my particular expertise is about face-to-face communication, particularly for the use of eye gaze in the communications. For example, like one of the major ways that you can communicate using the eyes is using the eye contact. When two persons look into each other's eyes, because you can see that because others are attending to you and you are attending to them, and then you both understand you are mutually attending to each other. You are using humans are using eye contact in many different contexts. Like when in a face-to-face communication, like when you are speaking to others, you are continuously using it to attend to others and just let the other knows you are attending to them. And of course, in a more dynamic situation, in a party when maybe you are speaking to someone else, but your friend is over there, then you make a very quick eye contact to just let them know that you are acknowledging them while continuing communication to someone else, because there are lots of sophisticated with human use with eye contact. One of the interesting property of the eye contact is it catches your attention. When someone is looking at you, your attention is almost automatically drawn to you. So, because you sometimes feel that, because you kind of feel that you are being watched, then you look over somewhere, then you see that actually someone is actually watching you. Because before you are aware that someone is there, before you are aware that someone is watching you, so your attention is almost automatically triggered by someone's gaze towards you, and your attention is pulled by it. So, and this technology often also used in the advertisement as well. Because there are like a recent study actually demonstrated that you are more likely to buy a product on which package the face actually looking at you than the face is looking away from you. Apparently, this like eye contact also have an effect in your attention, but it also affects the way you kind of evaluate or select something or like someone. So eye contact have many different uses in the human communication. And then we know that some companies are exploiting our human nature to sell their product. And our human physiology is also very uniquely adapted to use eye gaze as a part of communications. So these are like an example of different species of the primates, including humans at the bottom. So two things which is worth noting is that one is that the amount of sclera exposed from the eyelid are very large in humans compared to, for example, this species in Gallagher, which has like almost no exposure of the sclera. Apparently, this size of like a relative exposure of sclera is like as a function of the body size. So some evolutionary biologists, like evolutionary anthropologists, are claiming that because when the body is getting bigger, the cost of like moving your whole head is getting bigger as well. So maybe it's more efficient to just move your eyes to attend to something rather than moving your whole head. While the smaller species, like moving the whole head, may not be at a big cost. So like large primates like a gorilla, chimpanzee, orangutan, and of course humans as well tend to have like a larger, widely exposed sclera. And another thing which is also almost uniquely specific to the humans is that this sclera is white. What in biological term is depigmented. Almost all the other primate species sclera are pigmented, have like a darker hue, darker colors. But humans, this color is absent, which means that because the contrast between your iris and sclera is so bright. So it's almost like this human eyes are signaling the way, signaling the direction of your gaze, whereas like other species may be concealing the way, the direction of the gaze, which is kind of makes sense because concealing, because when you are competing somewhere else, then probably you don't want them to know that you are watching something, because maybe they exploit this information and just get the, food or get the threat before you. But in humans, in one theory, people claiming that one of the possible reasons why human sclera is depigmented is because humans are actually signaling the gaze for the communicative purposes, and it outsplit the cost of being exploited by someone else because humans are so cooperative species. And of course, eye gaze are used in many different ways, in many different levels. And simplest information is you can get from the other people's eyes is whether someone is looking at you or someone is looking away from you. Someone is attending to you or someone is not attending to you. And you can also see that because the direction someone is looking at you, and you can also follow the gaze. This behavior is called gaze following. When someone is looking at someone else, you tend to, in many cases, you follow someone's gaze, and then you may find that someone is attending to interesting object or some useful information. Maybe someone is watching at them potential reward as well. Then, what is more when you start to follow the gaze, then when you start to attend to the same object as the others, which is called joint attention, then you start to create this triangular understanding that you and someone else is attending to the both same object, and you are both understanding and other people are watching it. So it started to give that, because for example, when you want to talk about something, you are attending some topic, but you also want to know that other people are attending to the same topic as well. So by monitoring other people's gaze and monitoring the way, the point where someone is looking at, then you start to create this triangular situation, which is fundamentally our communication about something, communication about object, or communication about any topic in the world. Then from that, because you start to use other people's gaze to understand what other people attending to what other people know, what other people don't know, then from that, using other information as well, you started to create the representation of what other people are thinking about, what is in other people's mind. So such a capacity to almost read into other people's minds is called the theory of mind, which is one of the fundamental human capacity, which is used in understanding other people's behavior and also often used in the communication as well. And going back to the simplest level of eye contact detection, it appears almost immediate after birth. The newborns who are almost a few hours to a few days after birth, so this is one of the behavioral experiments our colleague Teresa Faroni did back in 2002. So think about the situation that when the babies are born, then when the babies are calmed down and ready for just watching something, then we're going to present two TV screens side by side. One of the TV screens presents a face looking straight ahead, and another TV screen is presenting the face which is looking away. Then we measure which TV screen these newborn babies look at. And this is what happened. So each black dot represents each single individual babies, and the top half is how long baby look at this face over this face, and the bottom line shows that how many times baby shift their gaze to this face over the other face. So in both measurements, it is very clear that because the babies are consistently preferring to look at the face with direct gaze compared to the face with averted gaze. So even almost immediately after birth, babies started to at least discriminate between direct and averted gaze. They can tell which one face is looking at you, which face is not looking at you, and they started to show the preference to look at the face who look at you. And another study is used another system called habituation dishabituation to again using the baby's eye gaze to study which face baby remember or not. So what happens is that in the first, this experiment is consisted of two phases. In the first phase, baby watched the video of the face, in this case looking straight ahead to the camera, making eye contact with the camera, and baby which present the video for quite a long time. And in the second phase, just like in the example before, we're going to present two faces side by side. One of the faces are the same faces appeared in the first phase, and another is a new face. So what do you think the babies do? What actually the 4-month-old baby did is that the baby looked longer to this face. What does it tell? This is one of the phenomena which is called habituation dishabituations. So baby look longer to this face because babies already remember this face. So this is kind of old information. So I've seen this person before. This person is someone new. Okay, there is someone else coming. That seems more interesting. So who that is? So when in this case of type of experiment, baby shows this kind of behavior, which is called a novelty preference. Because when they already know something, then something else comes up, they start to see look longer to the novel object. In this case, novel face. By doing this, we can at least tell that the baby actually remembers this face. By contrast, when babies keep watching the face who is looking away for quite some time, and in the second phase, saw this same face paired with a new face, baby didn't show this kind of preference. Baby looked equally longer to this face, which suggests that the baby didn't remember this face, but baby did remember this face. So it kind of shows that because when you are making eye contact with the babies, for some reason, it's tap into the baby's memory system, and then baby remember the face who is making eye contact, but not the face who is looking away. So eye contact help the baby to remember the particular face identity and recognize one face over the other. Another thing we tested is that whether this eye contact have any function in the communications. And as I said before, like the follow other person's gaze direction and gaze following is one of the many fundamental form of communication. Looking at someone else looking gonna give us an understanding of what someone else is attending and someone else is maybe trying to tell you about. So the sound is too loud. So what you did saw is the very typical gaze following situation. This blue dot is actually the point of gaze of the baby is overlaid onto the stimuli. It is just one example. So what happens is that the lady look away, making clear eye contact, and look at the object, and the baby follow the gaze and look at the same object. This is called gaze following. So maybe babies are just simply moved by their head movement, because movement can capture attention. So what we did is that we replaced this eye contact with something not social, but also similarly attention grabbing, like this. So this animation is capturing attention, but in this case, because baby end up going there, but by statistics, when we did like for the study for many times for like many different babies, on average, baby look equally to both these two objects. So when baby's attention is grabbed by some like animation which is not eye contact, baby look at this face, but not always follow the gaze. So far so good. So apparently eye contact helped the baby to follow gaze and possibly learn about someone is telling you. Then what we also did is that, if there is any other cues which have a similar function as the eye contact. So that's what I did. It's a very apparently weird, but something like a functional estimation. So we use exactly the same visual image as the previous one, which baby didn't follow the gaze, and added some auditory communicative cue, which is called the infant-directed speech. Infant-directed speech is the particular way humans vocalize toward the babies. Probably you all know. When you are facing baby, you are facing a young child, your voice changes, you start to speak in high pitch, very huge pitch contour, and which you don't, well, almost always don't do when you're speaking with adults. And humans do this in many different cultures, and we are not going to do universal things. And when baby hear this infant-direct speech pitch contour in these non-functional animations, then baby started to follow the gaze again. So apparently this type of different mode of communication also helped the baby to follow the gaze, which didn't happen in this case, in the next version.
Hello.
So same voice, same individual, same volume, same length, but in a flat, like boring, adult-directed speech contour, then baby did not follow the gaze in this condition. Apparently, it's either eye contact or like an exaggerated infant-direct speech, which seems to have like prime the baby or like trigger the baby to follow gaze. That maybe start to understand, prepare the baby to follow the gaze or like follow other communication act which follows this eye contact or like other signals. And I also show you one neuroimaging studies which measured babies' brain activity when babies are watching this face which makes eye contact and smiles, or the face which looks away and smiles. These red lines for the eye contact face and mutual gaze face, and the blue lines for the face and the gaze. averted gaze phase. So what actually happened is that this is, again, at this stage, the data came from the near-infrared spectroscopy, which I showed that the third of the technology, last of technology colleague introduced before, using the measuring the color of the blood in baby's brain to measure like where in the brains are more active. Then what they found is that in left temporal parietal region, which is kind of like right, it's the right side, right above the eyes. So there is like this part of the brain is called like a temporal lobe, parietal lobe. So this area is more active in response to direct gaze compared to averted gaze. And another area which is more active for the direct gaze compared to averted gaze is the frontal region that's right above your eyes. So these areas are kind of like called like associated complex association. These areas are known to integrate information to calculate the action of the humans and the intention or mental state of the humans. So apparently, as young as babies as young as 5 months old, when they saw the face looking at you, started to show the similar pattern of like brain activity as the adults see. Adults were thinking about someone else doing when the adults are watching someone else's actions and try to understand the intention of it. So apparently, eye contact started to kickstart that kind of like social computations in the baby's brains as well. So just to summarize up to this point, what eye contact does to the babies. It grabs baby's eyes, maybe attentions, and they help them to remember and identify you. It tapped into baby's memory system as well. And it prepares them for the communication. So it's interesting the baby start to have like expect some communication to start when they see eye contact. But of course, eye contact is not the only signal. We are also using other signals such as infantile direct speech or like other form of gestures to communicate with the babies. But eye contact is one of the key components in this communication. So then, of course, we are as a developmental psychologist or a developmental cognitive neuroscientist, we have to ask the question: why baby respond to the eye contact? How baby develop this capacity to respond to eye contact? There are two ways you can think about it. One is probably the more like an innate view, maybe during the course of human evolution, or like by some coincidence, this like human baby's brain are always equipped with what can be called like eye contact detector. So of course newborns can detect eye contact. So this brains are already prepared to detect eye contact and expect something before they experience something. That is one typical theory developmentalist pose. Another typical one is more like a learning view. Maybe in the beginning, baby can orient to the eye contact, but they don't really understand what it means. But by like repeated interaction with the mom, with their like other adults, and then they started to learn that maybe after they make eye contact, there is something interesting happened. Maybe like mom start to teach me something. Maybe there's something they're gonna show me something interesting, or like they're like when there's a new person there, they seem to make like more eye contact with me. So maybe because of this like a learned property of the eye contact, or like a learned association between the eye contact and positive social experience, baby may start to slowly develop the capacity to understand and react to the eye contact. So obviously this is a very difficult question to ask for the babies, and because most babies are, or almost all the babies are experiencing this like rewarding positive social experience with eye contact. So it's very difficult to tell what is the role of this experience. So to address this question, we study the babies born of the parents who are blind. Of course, these babies of blind parents have a very different experience of visual communications. These moms communicate. These moms, of course, love the babies and they interact with the babies in many different ways, but they cannot make a precise functional eye contact because they cannot see the baby's eyes. And overall, there are a few studies in the past which tracked the development of these babies, and they are all typical. There are no adverse effects on being reared by the blind parents. But of course, they are not experiencing eye contact with the mom, so maybe eye contact may be less rewarding to them. Then we are the first to test this very unique population of the babies and to see how they react to the eye contact. So we did several tasks with these babies. One thing we did is a face scanning task. So we present like a video of the face on the TV screen, and using the eye tracking technique, we measured how long baby look at the eyes of the face or mouth of the face. And we also did a gaze following task, whether baby follow the gaze or not. If they understand the function of the gaze, or baby they start not to care about the gaze of the direction of the gaze. And we also measure the recorded the interaction with the babies or their blind parents, and to see how often they use eye contact or like other form of communication with their parents. And we also measured how standard test of the cognitive development and social development as well. So it's a whole figures, but I'll pick explain one by one. So one thing is to summarize is that probably is that in most of the experimental figure in face scanning task or gaze following task, this white bar is for the control babies of sighted parents and black bar is babies of blind parents. There are actually almost no difference, and there are no decrease in the performance. So what happens is that when they are watching the sighted adults, either on the TV screen or like in a real interaction with someone who are sighted, their eye contact behavior is like almost normal. Their response to the eye contact, their response to the gaze are almost indistinguishable of those with babies of the sighted parents. So we didn't find any reduction or decrease in the response to eye contact in these babies. But we found two unique findings, which is specific to these babies. First thing happens when they're actually interacting with their blind parents. You can see because this is the frequency of like a face gaze, where how often they use the gaze toward the face on the mom to communicate, and there's clear reduction in the blind parents. And this is how often they use the vocalization, how often use their voice to communicate with the mom, and there is clear increase in this population. What seems to be happening is that when they are communicating with a blind mom, they are clearly adjusting the way they communicate. They started to use less face gaze and they start to use like more voice to communicate. So they can change it, but when they are watching someone totally unrelated, sighted adults, they don't show any preference. Their performance is very same. And another puzzling finding we found is because their development of attention and memory seems to be better than the babies of the sighted adults. So we don't really know what's happening. We are now following up this data to see what is happening to the cognitive development of these babies. But one theory, one possible interpretation is that these babies are developing in a very similar situation as the bilingual babies. Because the babies developing in the bilingual situation are known to show the early acceleration in the attention and memories. It may be because they have to always switch between two different modes of communication. The necessity to constantly switch and inhibit one mode or the other may help the early facilitation of communication. Maybe the same thing is happening with the baby, because when they are communicating with the blind parents and then maybe their sighted grandparents, they may be constantly switching the way they communicate. That may change the way their early development of visual attention memories. Just to summarize, babies of blind parents respond to eye contact with unfamiliar adults in the very same way as those with sighted parents. But they flexibly change the way they communicate with the blind parents. They use less gaze and more voice. So it seems that babies are born with kind of sensitivity to detect eye gaze because it's not fully learned. Because this like even with the babies who are always communicating with the blind parents, they didn't show the absence or decrease in the response to eye contact. So it seems that we humans are kind of always prepared to respond to direct gaze or like eye contact as a mode of communication. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't really change, because we may have a bias, we may have a sensitivity, but even as babies as young as 10 months old, like 14 months old, they are flexibly using this capacity because they are not always automatically responding to it. They are using this sensitivity, their bias in a very adaptive, useful way to adapt to the very different form of communication, very different from the social context. So before going to the topic, next topic, I will show you like one recent interesting studies which shows because there is another environmental factor which changes babies' eye contact behavior. So this is kind of one of the very famous style of psychology human behavior experiment called the T-shirts experiment. What they do is they, in this case, the experiment asks the mom to wear the T-shirts for, I think, 3 days. And then after they wear it, they do the procedure wash up, but because after wash up, apparently there are some like a residue or like a mom's smell or mom's odor in the T-shirts. Then after getting the T-shirts which have like a reminder of mom's scent, then they bring in the babies to the lab, and then using this similar eye tracking face scanning task under 2 conditions. In one condition, they put the T-shirts just under baby's chest so the baby can actually smell the mom's scent from the T-shirts. In the other context, they put the T-shirts which mom didn't wear, so they smell the T-shirts but doesn't smell mom. What actually happened here is that when baby presented with the mom's T-shirts, they started to look longer to the eyes compared to they see other T-shirts. We don't really know what's happening. Maybe baby are less anxious, more confident, or like baby associated mom's smell with a more communication situation. We don't really know, but apparently the presence of the familiar person, of the familiar environment seems to be one important factor for the baby to start eye contact and start to explore other person's faces. So the next topic is slightly more wider, because in the previous study, which I showed that the example that we can flexibly change the way we use eye contact when we in the communication situation. But it's not always not only for the special cases, because we are all living in a slightly different environment. So this slightly different environment may change the way you use your eyes for communications. The one aspect of our environment we focused on is the use of cultural norms of eye contact. In most of the Western European, North American cultures, making and maintaining eye contact is a norm. You shouldn't break your eye contact, otherwise you may be seen as like not confident or like hiding something or like unreliable. But in the Eastern Asian and more widely Asian cultures, including the Japanese culture in which I live, developed, making eye contact is also important, but breaking eye contact in some contexts are equally important. Like breaking eye contact after after making eye contact in some cases show the sign of respect or like comfortable distance between someone else. Maybe otherwise, maybe you may see that you have like you're too intimate. You're kind of like slightly like intruding someone else's personal space if you just make too long eye contact. Of course, these cultural norms are slightly different, so it kind of makes slightly awkward situations when you're communicating with someone else from during the different cultures. But so interesting. So there are several studies which actually tested how people in the different cultures uses eye contact. So maintaining, as I said, maintaining eye contact is cultural norm in Western European cultures, but breaking eye contact can signal respect in East Asian cultures. And in the some like experimental situation, it seems the when actually facing the real person in the lab, Western European people developing in West European cultures seem to maintain a longer eye contact than the East Asian cultures. And when you see someone staring at you, then you have to evaluate how angry they are and how sad they are, how pleasant the situation is. And it seems that because East Asian adults see this like staring from the others, like seems that it seems like present in the opposite way. Okay. Compared to the East Asian cultures, then the person who developed in the West East European cultures see the staring from the others less angry, less sad, more pleasant, and more approachable compared to the person developed in the East Asian cultures. So the way you interpret the situation in which someone is staring at you can be affected by the culture in which you developed. And we did an eye tracking study with the adults and children in the UK and in Japan. And in adults, it's interesting that actually when we present this like an image of the face on the TV screen and measured do the eye tracking, it was actually British who looked longer on the mouth, and it was Japanese who looked longer to the eyes. It is very different situation from where actually facing the real person. So that, of course, that has to be confirmed again because we don't really know why, but this is replicated in some other studies as well. One theory is that apparently Western European and East Asian uses different form of like facial expressions. West European have a more like a distinctive facial expression using both eyes and mouth, but Eastern Asian culture use more like a nuanced, communicate more nuanced intensity of the your emotion using the slight movement around your eyes. So it may be that because when participants here don't know that they are not like looking back at you, so maybe their eyes are drawn to more informative part. But another thing is because we kind of replicated the natural observation in this experimental setting. When this face is looking toward you, making eye contact, making direct gaze, both cultures like returned eye contact. But when this face is looking away, actually Japanese also looked away, so they kind of like a coordinated timing of like breaking eye contact. But adults in the West European cultures just maintained eye contact. So it seems that because these adults developed in different culture respond differently to the movement of the eyes even on the TV screen. And we also studied the same phenomenon using testing the babies. This time children from 1 to 7 years old. Like adults, these British children look longer on the mouth, and Japanese children look longer on the eyes. So apparently there's sensitivity to the different part of the face in different cultures seems to develop very early. Maybe it develops like first several years of life. But unlike adults, Japanese children did not look away when the face moved their eyes away from the viewers. So they performed like in the same way as the British children. So apparently like a sensitivity to this, when to break eye contact, how to respond to other people's eye movement. This capacity developed much later, at least not in the children. I'm young children. I'm now testing much older children and adolescents to see when this kind of like sensitivity to the other eye gaze appears during the course of development. So just to summarize, yes, Western European adults look both eyes and mouth, and Asian look mainly on the eyes. It happens from very early childhood. So it seems that they develop this kind of different eye gaze to different part of the face develop very early in the development. It may be related to the cultural difference of facial expression, as I explained. But differential eye gaze to different about gaze happened only in adults in our studies. So it's possible that this cultural norm might affect only the mature member of the society. Maybe when you are children, then you are not punished by making culturally appropriate gaze, but it might be becoming less and less tolerant when you grow up and becoming one mature member of the society. So maybe this like the developmental change in the expectation from your cultural background might change the way your eyes react to other people's face. So there is another recent study I wanted to draw your attention. Could come from the different lab from ours. But it seems that because it's more like their personal experience also change the way your brain reacts to other people's direct gaze, eye contact. As I said, like the babies, adults activate brain areas for the mind reading, like prefrontal area or temporal parietal areas when they see someone else's direct gaze on the TV screen. But adults with PTSD, post-stress traumatic this post-traumatic stress disorder, which is related to the consistent childhood abuse, did not show that kind of like response of the mind reading in response to other people's gaze. What their brain is activated instead is a more like an early warning system. It's a very evolutionary old system which responds to the immediate threat. So yes, the way you are reared, the way you develop in your life history can change the way in adult your brain responds to the communicative situation. So the development, childhood experience also matters a lot. So to summarize, how do babies develop eye contact? Baby seems to be born with the sensitivity to detect and make eye contact. Apparently, it's in humans that we don't exactly know what is the system, like how specific it is, but something in our brain is slightly biased to prefer faces with eye contact over the faces with averted gaze. How specific it is, how understanding is newborn, but because newborn are not born with tabula rasa, and they are born with some preference. But of course, they are not born with everything. They may be born with something, but they learn a lot during the course of development. Babies then learn how to use it appropriately in their own familiar environment, whether their mom is sighted or blind, or social cultural environment, what is appropriate eye gaze behavior in your society. So their brain development is have some like an inborn, like a prepared component, but development is also highly flexible and adaptive to your own social environment. Such a development forms a foundation of human face-to-face communication. And of course, with other forms of communicative cues, it is the way why probably eye contact is very important in the human face-to-face communication. And of course, this communication situation is very important to baby's development. So thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions for Atsushi?
I appreciate that you didn't show all your experiments and data, but I'm not satisfied with your conclusion with photos staring at the child and then averted gaze that shows that the child remembers the staring face. I mean, I don't find such a conclusion from that data at all. Is there something else that you did to come to that conclusion?
Okay, so conclusion is about, of course, you're right, because any single experiment cannot draw anything, something very specific. But at least we can say that because what we do is we have pitch table and different hypotheses, and then create an experiment in which different hypotheses predict different theories. Also, in one particular experiment I presented is that is the face eye contact remembered face is the way eye contact affects human baby's memory system. Then it seems that it affects the memories. So it seems that from that single experiment we can conclude that babies are remembering faces with eye contact more than the faces about it. So is that about particular experiment you are talking about? I'm lost.
Like first you show the baby's staring face, and then you show another staring face, and the baby stared longer to the second face. So you concluded that the baby remembers the first face.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why.
Yes.
Okay,
so it's more about yes, this is a known phenomenon, and so probably the most important thing is that it's not that which one they look longer, but they look differently in the face with direct gaze.
I mean, myself, I would conclude that probably babies are inquisitive. So when you show them,
yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah. And in the second experiment, when we showed two averted staring people, the baby kept looking at one and then the other and at the other. And my conclusion would be the baby is trying to get communication with either of these people. And the baby stares at one picture, and the picture doesn't stare back at her, and then she hopes the other picture may communicate with me and stare at me. It doesn't work, and she keeps switching from one picture to another because she doesn't get the response that she's expecting, and she's just trying two pictures. That would be my conclusion.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the feedback. So that inquisitiveness is like exactly what we are using, exploiting. Because as I said, because you cannot directly ask the babies whether they are remembering something or not. But so what exactly happening here is that they are looking this face longer than this face. So which means that they are looking differently to these two faces. Because these two faces are clearly matched because it's also counterbalanced because half the baby look this person staring at, the other half the baby look this person staring in the face, but they consistently look to the new faces. So probably it's inquisitiveness, but it also, but because for inquisitiveness to happen, they have to remember this face. So it's because that's the conclusion. Because the bottom, after they remember something, why they look at one face longer than the other, there are so many different interpretations. But because as a scientist, we want to see something which we can safely conclude. And the one thing we can safely conclude here is that baby remember this face. That's why they look different to do this face. Now, possibly they look longer this face because as there's a novelty effect, the inquisitiveness, baby often prefer something new informations. And this condition is also exactly the same procedure. They'll watch this face as long as they see and they are paired with a new face, but they didn't look different to do this face. And again, this is a very difficult question to answer because this is what scientists call negative data. Because we can conclude that if someone is looking at something significantly longer than the other one, we can conclude that there is a difference. But if we don't find any difference, it is very difficult to conclude anything because maybe each baby is doing something different. But the important thing here is that because these two conditions are using exactly the same procedure and we are seeing the effect only in this condition. So there is something in this condition but not in this condition which generates baby's preference. So from that condition, we are showing that something which is something in this condition but not in the condition is the direct gaze eye contact. So from using this kind of inference assumptions, we start conclude that so baby's memory are affected because they encode this face and show some novelty effect in this condition but not in this condition. So that is kind of the logics we use to create. But as you are right, baby may be remembering this face but not showing preference with some other effect, but it's highly unlikely that because there are several other experiments with control for it, which I can't really go into detail. But and again, in this kind of experiment is like very well used in the infant science over the past 20 years, and it's one of the ideal way, but the best possible way we can tap into baby's memory system.
Another question? Maybe there.
Two questions. What's the age of the youngest infant that you've is? And second one is in the in the experiments mapping the activity in the brains, have you actually had any infants who show the activities in reversed modes to what you would expect to see?
Could you please repeat the first question?
What's the age of the youngest infants you've had in your experiments?
Each study uses different age ranges, tested different age ranges. For the particular brain experiment, actually this is not exactly my experiment, but the experiment done by my colleagues. It was a 5-month-old. And the consistency, it's a good question. I don't exactly remember the detail, but usually there are always a few babies who tend to show the opposite effect, but it's very difficult to say that we are measuring this like a clear difference at the individual level, because each individual data are noisy. Maybe baby got tired, maybe thinking about something else, maybe moved a bit in one condition over the others. What we do is we average large enough number of the data from like large enough number of the children, and to see like whether their brains are discriminating one from the other at the group level. So in making some like interpretation about the individual data from this quality of signal to noise ratio of the data is not impossible, but very difficult to interpret.
Another question?
Did you do the experiment with the smell, like
It's not ours.
showing the picture of mother with the smell of mother, whether
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's not our study, and I'm not sure. I think they can match, but I'm not entirely sure about it.
Another question? If not, thank you very much for coming. There's refreshments in B02. You go out the door, you go left along the corridor, past the toilets, turn right and left into the next corridor, and I think it's the first room on the left. There'll be people to show you there. The next lecture is at 7 o'clock in here on mindfulness meditation. I'd like to thank Atsushi once again.